Off and running on the Krug Show on a Friday. It's Super Bowl week. Super Bowl 60 is 72 hours away. That's right. Chase Senior's down there at Radio Row in the Media Center. I'm here in my normal studio. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week. They're soon to open in Petaluma. Check them out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Also, thanks to Sleeper for sponsoring this as well. We'll talk about them in a bit. But first, we titled the stream Super Bowl Preview and what the Niners must fix to compete with the best. Why don't we start with the breaking headline of Super Bowl 60, which is Nick Emanwari, the safety for the linebacker slash safety slash corner for the Seahawks. They're all-world rookie. Supposedly rolled his ankle in practice this week. He is going to play. Does it impact how you see this game in any way, shape, or form, Chase?
I think a little bit, and I'm here at the Moscone Center, downtown San Francisco, providing Super Bowl 60 for Chat Sports, and I'm here with our Patriots host and our Seahawks host, and this has been a big topic of conversation and a big storyline to follow over the last couple of days because of how valuable Nick Emanwari is to what the Seahawks do defensively, and it was a great draft pick, in my opinion, for Mike Macdonald because of the scheme fit, of course, but the utilization of Nick Emanwari. And we knew that going into the NFL draft after how he tested at the NFL Combine in Indy with some of the things that he did when he was in college, that he was an athletic freak. I mean, his relative athletic score was nearly 10. And for him to go to Macdonald, I thought was perfect for him and perfect for Macdonald. You saw how Macdonald had used Kyle Hamilton, but Emanwari is an even better athlete and probably has even more versatility. And so he's the chess piece of that defense. He's very interchangeable, and you alluded to it. He can play safety. He can play hybrid linebacker. You can use him as a blitzer. You can utilize him around the line of scrimmage. He can get after the quarterback. He causes a lot of problems for the opposing defense. And so if he's limited, if he's hampered, if he can't play, that's a big loss for the Seahawks defense. The word is that he's going to play, but he suffered that injury late in the week, midweek, and he was seen getting out of a car, 2 nights ago, and he was limping. Now, the good news is it's not like a ligament. It's not a soft tissue injury. I think he just rolled his ankle, and so you shoot him up with some painkillers if you're the Seahawks, and you hope that it doesn't hurt him too much.
How do you see this game? I mean, we've talked a couple times this week, but do you feel great about Seattle? Do you feel great about New England? I kind of think it's going to be a low-scoring defensive slog. I like New England's defense to slow down Seattle. I like Seattle's defense to slow down New England. I think it's a low-scoring game. I think Sam Darnold's going to have a turnover or two. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. I don't know who's going to win, but I think the spread's going to come into play. I think it's going to be close. How do you see it?
Yeah, I was here on Radio Row yesterday, and I was talking with some professional sports bettors, Kelly in Vegas, Ariel Epstein, and we were talking about the line and the props, of course. And the line, 4.5 to 5 in favor of the Seahawks. So the Patriots are getting 4.5, 5 points. And you speak with some NFL insiders here and people who cover this game for a living, everybody is on Seattle. And I like the Seahawks to win this game, but I do think that line is a little bit too high. And that's exactly what Kelly in Vegas was saying. She was also pointing to the fact that the over-under is 45.5, I believe. And outside of that really boring Super Bowl between the New England Patriots and the Los Angeles Rams, the first one that Sean McVay and the Rams went to when Jared Goff was the quarterback, the unders haven't hit that frequently. The overs have hit quite often. And that might be surprising to some people because these are two top 3 defenses. These are two teams who have defensive-oriented head coaches. And what the Patriots and Seahawks do on defense is really impressive. They have similar styles as far as playing violent and playing physical. But I do think, one, that we see some points scored in this game. And 2, I like Seattle to win, but I think it's close. I think the Seahawks win by a field goal. I'm not willing to go Seattle minus 4.5, and definitely not if it goes up to 5, 5.5. But just from a talent standpoint, I just think that Seattle is a more talented team, and I think they're a deeper team. This Patriots team is a little bit younger, and they don't have as much quality depth as Seattle does, and that's just a credit to John Schneider and how he's built this roster, because in the draft, in free agency, making a couple of really pivotal trades, he's done an excellent job. He's been in his bag as GM.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. I mean, Les Snead has done an amazing job with the Rams. John Schneider's done an amazing job with Seattle, and they've pushed past the 49ers. I titled this stream, What the Niners Must Fix to Compete with the Best Teams in Pro Football. What do you think, Chase? I mean, the Niners are going to have more money to spend this offseason than they had last year. They should be a bigger player in free agency than they were. How could they not be? They didn't do anything last year at all. I think they were 30th in free agent spending, where the two teams that are in this game were both in the top 5 of free agent spending. New England was the top spender in the offseason, spending over $300 million. The Niners spent like $50 million. What do the Niners need to do this offseason to run with the best teams in this league?
A little while ago, I caught up with Joe Shasky of 95.7, and I asked him, what are the biggest areas of need for this Niners team going into 2026? How can they close the gap on a team like Seattle, on a team like the Rams? What can they do to be in this spot next year competing for a Super Bowl 61 championship, which is going to be in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium? And it took us both a little while to pinpoint exactly what the Niners need to do and what they need to address in order to close the gap on some of the upper echelon teams across the National Football League. But we did come to an agreement on one particular thing, and this is also what I talked to Bill Romanowski about, the 4-time Super Bowl champion who won 2 Super Bowls with the Niners with Joe Montana and then 2 more with the Denver Broncos with John Elway. What a career for him, and I think he's one of the more underrated linebackers of all time. And he mentioned that the Niners need to get better, more physical and violent along the offensive line, because he talked about what you and I have been discussing, that San Francisco was absolutely manhandled in the trenches the last 2 games against the Seahawks. And I just don't envision how Seattle is going to go anywhere anytime soon from a coaching standpoint with Mike McDonald, how they've built that roster. They're also really talented. They're a young team, but the style of play, Larry, is not going to alter and change. What they emphasize, which is building up the offensive line and defensive line, is also not going to be pivoted from if you're the Seahawks. So I just think that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch need to put more of an emphasis on the offensive line. You have to get better. You have to get more stout. You have to get more physical. And I'd love for the Niners to get some offensive linemen in here, whether it be draft and free agency, who are just more talented players, but guys who have a nasty streak to them. Guys who have that wrestling background, which you and I from a scouting standpoint really like, who are just maulers, who take no shit from the opposition, who have no fear, who play the game in a way where they just want to plow you over, run over you, and run through you. So I'm going to settle along the offensive line, center and left guard, as the 2 biggest areas for this team where San Francisco needs to improve. And you can do that with the Tyler Linderbaum of the Baltimore Ravens. You can do that in the NFL draft, and you can still get really good centers in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, and maybe even later in the draft. But center and left guard, I think, are the 2 pivotal areas. And I'll round out just by saying this, if you figure out the offensive line and you're better there, it's going to positively impact the run game, which the last 2 years hasn't been good enough or consistent enough. You have a 30-year-old running back next season in Christian McCaffrey, and it also helps out your pass game. And just from a business standpoint, if you're going to invest so much money in Brock Purdy, don't you want to keep your expensive prized possession healthy? And in the divisional round against Seattle, he was running for his life because of the interior penetration and the fact that Seattle was just able to get home with 4 way too often.
The Eagles offensive line coach decided to walk away from the Eagles. What was the story there? This guy's one of the best in the business. There's all kinds of rumblings that they weren't listening to him. He didn't say he's retiring. He just said he's moving on from the Eagles. Some Niner fans were like, hey, the Niners ought to hire him. Then the Niners really like Chris Foerster, so they're probably going to stick with Foerster. But why did things go south between, is it Stoutman? Is that his name?
Yeah, Jeff Stoutland.
Oh, Stoutland, yeah.
Yeah.
Why did Stoutland leave the Eagles?
Well, he's probably the best offensive line coach in the NFL right now, and he's one of the best offensive line coaches in the history of the NFL. When the Patriots went on that dynastic run, they had one of the other great offensive line coaches throughout the course of NFL history in Dante Scarnecchia, and Jeff Stoutland is right up there. But I don't think it's as much of things souring between him and the organization as much as it is a philosophical and schematic shift that we're going to see from the Eagles in 2026. Larry, you know this. You've been here on Radio Row all week, and one of the cool things is that you can just walk around and talk football and talk shop with a bunch of different people, whether it be current former coaches, current former players, or people who cover this game. And a little bit ago, I was talking with Greg Cosell, who is one of the brightest football minds in the industry. He's been a senior producer at NFL Films for 46 years. And I asked him, were you surprised that Jeff Stoutland left the Eagles? And he said, I was a little bit, but not entirely. And this is why. The Eagles hired an offensive coordinator in Sean Mannion, who comes from a completely different offensive background. He hails from the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur scheme. He played under Clint Kubiak. He was alongside Dave Canales and some of these great offensive minds like Kevin Stefanski. And from a run game coordinator point of view, and Stoutland was the Eagles run game coordinator for many years, and just an offensive line schematic perspective, what those coaches do is a lot different than what Jeff Stoutland is accustomed to. He's never coached in a Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur type of system. And so I think the Eagles offense next year is going to look entirely different because it's a completely new scheme. And I think when you bring in a new offensive coordinator, one of the holdups and what took so long for the Eagles trying to find an OC was they didn't want to have to inherit a run game coordinator. They wanted to bring in their own guy. That's exactly what Sean Mannion is going to do. So the play calling, the play design, the scheme tendencies, it's going to be a lot different than what we've seen from the Eagles over the last few years. I think you have to give Sean Mannion that opportunity to mold the offense in a way that he sees fit. And they wanted Jeff Stoutland to come back, but because of the inexperience coaching in that particular offense, I think he felt as though he was going to leave. Now, his run game coordinator duties did get stripped from him last year, but that's because the offensive line was horrid. The run game was non-existent. And actually, when Nick Sirianni and the offensive coordinator at the time, Kevin Patullo, started to design new running concepts, the run game actually got better. The yards per carry went up by a half yard. But Jeff Stoutland is a very prideful guy. I've interviewed him a couple of times. He wants to do things his way. And how can you blame him? He's developed 5 All-Pros, a couple of Hall of Famers. He was with the Eagles for 13 years. He had a Pro Bowler along the offensive line in all 13 years. But if he has to coach a completely new scheme, I could see why he would want to leave.
Yeah, for the 49ers, I mean, they need to invest in the offensive line. Now, I understand that, a lot of times if you're drafting O-linemen up high in the draft, you're back there at the top of the draft again. And I think the 49ers have referenced that. The guy that I would go after is I think Washington's hugged up against the cap, and I think they're going to cut Nick Allegretti. And he was good in Kansas City. He can play either guard spot. He can play center. I think that would give you the veteran coverage inside. And then offensive tackle. I mean, I think you got to invest in some offensive tackles. I like J.C. Davis from Illinois. I like Emil Wagner from Notre Dame. They're not going to be day one guys. They're probably 5th-round picks. So I would definitely invest in the offensive line, but I don't know if I would invest early picks in the offensive line. You mentioned Cosell. Let's share the screen here. He weighed in on the Niners in the backfield. Listen to this and tell me what you think. This is Greg Cosell.
Coach said that he thought McCaffrey was still a great player and the player you had to deal with when you play the Niners, but he thought he just was half a step slower. And, again, for someone like myself, did I see that exactly? I would have to answer that no. Now, you could certainly look at the fact that he didn't have many long runs this year, not many 20-plus yard runs, which he's had in the past. I would also argue, based on tape studies solely, that there were too many times where he couldn't get past the first level of the defense, which is not necessarily on him. But to know what the future holds, boy, that's hard to know. I mean, he certainly has a lot of touches. He's supposed to be a workout fiend in the offseason. He's obviously not going anywhere. He'll be back this year as the back. Maybe it is time, just as a general principle, for him not to have that many touches and to get someone who you can line up and who's maybe not McCaffrey, but at least you feel good enough about putting him out there for 2 or 3 possessions every week. So then McCaffrey doesn't, because look, what did he have this year in terms of touches? Did he have over 400?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If you count the playoffs, it was right around there.
The playoffs,
yeah. I mean, that's an exorbitant number of touches for a back.
No question. What do you think?
Larry, he mentioned something that was spot on. Like, okay, was Christian McCaffrey maybe a half step slower, a quarter of a step slower? Yeah, maybe. But the guy still had an incredible season. He was in the running for Offensive Player of the Year. I thought he should have gotten more MVP consideration. He won Comeback Player of the Year. But the big thing with McCaffrey in this Niners running game was the yards before contact. And the fact that when he got carries so often, Cosell just mentioned it was impossible for him to get to that second level or to generate an explosive play. Why? Because this offensive line was either getting beat or pushed back. And as soon as McCaffrey got the ball, there were multiple defenders in his face and there was nowhere for him to go. And that to me is an offensive line issue. It's not really a scheme issue. It's not really a play calling issue. It's not really a CMC problem. It's an offensive line problem.
No, I agree. And not only that, I think it had a lot to do with the fact the Niners were slow as hell at receiver. So you've got everybody kind of leaning forward. Nobody's worried about getting beat over the top. The lack of speed created more traffic for him at that second level. I mean, when he did get to the second level, there was somebody just waiting for him, just waiting for him on that. So it was almost impossible for him to get a 20-yard run this year. This is what I would do. The Lions are hugged up against the cap. David Montgomery is considered to be a guy that may be a cap casualty. He played with Brock Purdy at Iowa State. I think he's the perfect guy to sign. Go sign David Montgomery. Put McCaffrey more in that Jahmyr Gibbs role. Go into the draft for like a Kalon Black out of Indiana or somebody like that who's got some, a hard charging running back that could play in a committee. And instead of trying to make it all about CMC, use a little Jordan James if you want to, but go get yourself good secondary backs and run the ball with more of a committee, improve your line, add some speed at receiver, and I think it's going to be just fine. But if they come back and it's like the O-line's not improved and the receivers are still slow as hell and they still don't have a real complimentary back and it's all CMC, they're going nowhere. It won't even be as successful next year as it was this year. So I just think they have to, really take a sobering look at their backfield and say, hey, man, we got to have Christian as part of a committee. It can't be all Christian all the time. It won't work.
Yeah, 2 thoughts on that. This is why I had an issue with the Jordan Mason trade. And I know that Jordan Mason got a little bit more money from the Minnesota Vikings, and the Niners got back, that 5th-round pick for Jordan Mason, and they used it on Marquise Siegel. But there were really people in this Niners space who were saying, this is a great trade for San Francisco. I didn't like it because what can a physical back who can pick up yards after contact do for you when you have a bad offensive line? Regardless of if the offensive line is good or bad, if it sucks, that running back who's a bell cow, physical downhill one-cut guy, especially in this Kyle Shanahan system, is going to be able to pick up yards regardless of how the offensive line performs. And it's so funny because Marquise Siegel started off the year starting at safety for the Niners, and people were like, well, if we didn't trade away Jordan Mason, we wouldn't have had Marquise Siegel. Who could have helped this team in 2025 and 2026 more? Marquise Siegel or Jordan Mason? Who's a really good back, in my opinion? Jordan Mason. And so I think he's a good back, and I thought what he did last year when Christian McCaffrey got hurt was very impressive, and frankly, the Niners really could have used him this past season. The other thing, too, why did it take until the divisional round in garbage time when Kyle Shanahan finally arrested Christian McCaffrey to give Jordan James carries? Jordan James is also a physical back who has really good contact balance, and one of the only bright spots in that loss to Seattle in the playoffs was Jordan James. I think that he can clearly play, and I think that he should have more of a role in 2026.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Okay, let's share the screen and show this quote. This is from, here we go. This is off Coach Yak's Twitter, and this is Tom Pelissaro, the latest on Mac Jones. He says, full anticipation there is going to be interest in Mac Jones in a trade this offseason. Frankly, Brock Purdy's history would suggest there's a decent chance that he may miss a game or 2 or 5 coming up this season. And in that case, you need a really good backup quarterback. I would certainly anticipate that there will be interest in Mac Jones if the 49ers are willing to answer the phone. We've talked about it. He may be the second best quarterback to Fernando Mendoza. At worst, he's the third best quarterback behind Mendoza and Malik Willis. And yet, if you didn't have Mac Jones this year, Chase, I mean, don't you think Niner fans, if they had gone 5-12 and missed the playoffs, they'd be calling for John Lynch's head. They might be calling for Shanahan's head. So Mac Jones shielded the regime from a lot of that criticism by the way he played. How would you handle this next year? You want to bring Mac Jones back and have him be, injury insurance against Purdy in the playoffs? Or do you want to move him because it's a unique market and you might be able to get a great price tag? And then if so, who do you want as your replacement quarterback for Mac? Who's going to be your next kind of reclamation project? What do you think? How should the Niners play their hand with Jones?
I saw Mac Jones walking around here the other day. He's bigger than what a lot of people think. Like, that's a big-bodied quarterback, and shout out to him for rocking some fresh Jordans on his feet as well. My thoughts on this haven't really changed. I think because this quarterback class is looked at as a thin one, you have Fernando Mendoza as quarterback 1, then who is that quarterback 2? It's probably Ty Simpson, but that gap from Mendoza to Simpson from QB1 to QB2 is very drastic. So how do the Niners evaluate this? Will they value quarterback security, given that Brock Purdy has been hurt often to start his career, or will they value draft compensation? Because this quarterback class is thinner, I think that in the process drives up the asking price for Mac Jones, because I don't think there are a lot of teams right now who are quarterback needy want to overdraft a quarterback. Now, maybe the New York Jets with their second first-round pick in the late teens use a pick on Ty Simpson, and I think that would be smart because they wouldn't be overdrafting. But a team that's in the top 5, that's in the top 10, even the top 15, do you want to waste a valuable first-round pick on a quarterback who in prior years would not be a first-round pick? I think that would be a pretty dumb strategy from a team-building standpoint. And a lot of the teams at the top half of this draft, they have a lot of needs on their roster. So because this quarterback class is pretty weak, especially compared to previous years, I think that the Niners could get a pretty good haul for Mac Jones. A second-round pick and a third-round pick, I think, is completely doable. And for a team that last year had that hybrid reset rebuild that clearly wanted to build through the draft, especially tinker and rebuild that defense, they're looking to do the same this year as well. And so a second and a third-round pick could be very valuable for San Francisco. But you also have to think that looking ahead to 2026, if you move off of Mac Jones, who's your backup quarterback? Do you have confidence in Curtis Rourke that he can be QB2? Because, Larry, as you mentioned, if the Niners didn't have Mac Jones in 2025, he went 5-3. He resurrected his career. He played really well without George Kittle, with Kendrick Bourne as his 1 at wide receiver. Not a lot of help at the skill position spots. The run game was pretty much non-existent. The defense wasn't great, yet he still was able to persevere and showed everybody that he could be a starting quarterback in this league. So it would be very risky for the Niners to move off of Mac Jones. A second and a third round pick, though, would be very valuable. If the Niners did go that route, they have to make sure that they get a good QB2. It can't be a Brandon Allen or a Joshua Dobbs. It has to be a better option. Can they go after a Zach Wilson and resurrect his career? Could they make a trade for an Anthony Richardson? I'm looking at those types of quarterbacks who the Niners could maybe target. You look in the draft. Drew Aller is coming off a broken ankle. He's big, has a strong arm, but he's so raw and green. can Kyle Shanahan develop him? Because his physical traits are very attractive. A guy like Garrett Nussmeier, his stock really fell from last year to this year. Could that be an option and a good scheme fit for Shanahan? He's got some NFL bloodlines. His dad is the offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. So I'm looking at those types of players potentially.
You know, it's interesting. I think as much as I like Mac, I think I would trade Mac. One, because I think he wants to go somewhere and play. Two, I think he's good enough to start, which I almost feel like they shouldn't stand in his way. Also, I do think he could really attract a great price. Like, I think Minnesota you might be able to get Jordan Addison and a day 2 pick for.
What if you
for
could
Mac
get a
Jones.
second in Jordan Addison? I know there's risk with Jordan Addison, but like that's a type of trade where if you're the Niners, can you turn that down? That'd be difficult to do.
Well, and then looking at this draft class, and I've spent some time this week taking a closer look. So Mendoza's the number 1 guy, and Ty Simpson's probably going in round 1, and some people like Carson Beck. But it's considered to be a really bad draft class. But I'll tell you, just from doing some deep dives on some of these quarterbacks, Garrett Nussmeier, his issues might have been LSU's issues because he sure looked good in the All-Star game. He looked terrible at LSU. I mean, terrible. And he had some great players around him in the backfield, at receiver, on the offensive line. He had talent, but they just looked bad. He just looked really, really bad. So, but he looked good to me in the All-Star
program
game.
was kind of a mess in 2025,
especially offensively. So he's intriguing to me. Then watching more, all the talk about Trey Lance coming out of North Dakota State, the guy they got now, the lefty, his name's Cole Payton. He is very exciting prospect. And they're thinking he's going to go in the 200 range. So, I mean, that's a day 3 guy for sure. Mark Gronowski from Iowa had a very good all-star game. He's kind of interesting. Haynes King from Georgia Tech, had a kind of resurgence under Georgia Tech. He's kind of interesting. And then the kid Jacob Clark from Missouri State, who's supposedly done nothing but win and win and win. He looked interesting in the Shrine game. So it might be kind of a day 3, quarterback class where you could find some guys that are pretty damn good on day 3. So I don't know. I think if I could get a second-round pick and a player for Mac Jones, I think I'd do it. I think the 49ers have too many needs to sit there and say, well, we're just going to hold Mac Jones. I do understand, though, that, Mac is insurance. And
especially under the current construct of his contract.
Yeah, $7 million. That's a screaming deal for Mac Jones. Roger Craig made the Hall of Fame last night. It was a great moment for Niner fans. And it was, I'll share the screen, let people see one of the images. Here's how it was given to Roger. Charles Haley and Ronnie Lott showed up at his doorstep. This is pretty great footage here. Here's Roger.
Ronnie Lott, yeah.
Look at that.
What a moment.
Awesome.
Welcome to the 2026 Hall of Fame, bro. These guys help me out all the time, so being in the Hall of Fame with them, I'm so amazed.
Yeah, great moment there for Roger.
About 2 decades late, Larry.
Yeah, it was too late for sure, but at least he's alive and he's gonna get to enjoy his day. And here is how it sounded last night. And this moment, I want to show this again because this moment, maybe it's just me, maybe that's because I'm getting older, but man, this one gave me chills, man. Watching Roger walk out to this announcement last night, this was when it became an actual fact. Here it is.
To do it in San Francisco, too.
Awesome.
Oh, yes. He's the first player to ever rack up 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving in the same season. A 3-time Super Bowl champ. We've been waiting to hear his name called to Canton for a long time, and it happens in San Francisco. 49ers legend, Hall of Famer Roger Craig.
Beautiful, just beautiful, man. I mean, as somebody who's done some events with Roger and know what kind of guy he is, Chase, man, this is a great moment for for all Niner fans. And I'm trying to see if I can make the trip out to Canton this summer for it, because
Wow.
it's going to be an awesome moment. And this guy belonged in, and people who don't get it are citing stats this morning. It's not about stats, man. The thing that I would say that to anybody who throws stats is that Jerry Rice was the greatest stats guy of all time. And Jerry Rice was such a great stats guy that it took shine off of everybody else. Brent Jones, John Taylor, Ricky Waters, Roger Craig. They were all better than their stats, all because Jerry's stats were in the stratosphere. And I think if people just kind of could put their arms around that, they would understand that it's not about the stats for Roger. It was about his contribution.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm not a huge awards guy. I think it's always funny when some people will flaunt awards from something that they won with like a local news station. Like, nobody cares. It doesn't speak to your talent level. And oftentimes you have to like pay a fee to submit yourself to even be up for some of these awards. This is different though. This is the ultimate honor for any football player. This is the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I was talking about this with John Middlecoff the other day, host of the 3 and Out podcast under the Volume umbrella with Colin Cowherd. And we were like, the Hall of Fame is an absolute joke. Like, say what you want about Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft. It's one of the best head coaches in the history of the league, one of the best owners in the history of the league. They should be first ballot Hall of Famers. If anybody is on this sour grapes train and is so bitter to the point where they don't vote them into the Hall of Fame, their press credentials, they should be revoked, because there's no doubt that Belichick, Kraft are first ballot Hall of Famers. And with Roger Craig, first ballot Hall of Famer, maybe not. But for him to finally be inducted in 2025, legitimately, it's like 2 decades late. This is a guy who was a member of the 1980s All-Decade team. So for a decade, he was one of the best players in the history of the National Football League. He was a 2-time All-Pro. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler. Larry, he was doing things, I was talking about this with Middlecoff as well, that were well before his time. He became the first player in NFL history to have 1,000 yards receiving and 1,000 yards rushing. Think about how much the game has changed since the 1980s, and think about how difficult that was to do then. Almost impossible, and that's why he became the first. So a one-of-one player who is so ridiculously talented, so unique, so durable. He was a key ingredient and pillar to those Super Bowl winning Niners teams, and I'm glad that he finally got the respect and the recognition that he deserves.
Yeah, no, he absolutely did, and it was amazing. We'll finish with 2 last thoughts, one on the Super Bowl, one on trades. Spot Track listed trade candidates for the upcoming season, and they had a bunch of them here, and 2 Niners made the list. One was Mac Jones, the other was Demo Lenore. What do you think about Demo Lenore? Do you think there's a chance that the Niners trade Lenore in the offseason? That seems unlikely to me.
I think he's one of the most underrated corners in football, and it's been that way since probably after his rookie year. Even when he stepped in as a rookie, I thought he played pretty well, but this is a corner who has given up under 5 touchdowns in coverage when he drops back. And the Niners, when they signed him during last year, I thought they got ahead of the cornerback market. And if they would have waited until the offseason, which is something that has burned this regime a lot because it's just cost them millions of dollars and the market flow leads to these contracts being bigger, I think Demo would be on another team, and I think he could have gotten around $20 million. Instead, I think the Niners got him on a pretty cost-controlled contract for the player that he is. Great developmental story for San Francisco. I love the way that he plays. There's a reason why his nickname is the Hyena. Never backs down from any challenge. He said that he wanted Jackson Smith and Jigba. The biggest play that JSN had on him was a play where Diamador Lenore was flagged for something that was very questionable. I don't think it would make any sense for the Niners to move off of Diamador Lenore. I think actually what you have to do, figure out what you think of Renardo Green in your evaluation process. Is he going to fit Raheem Morris's scheme? Can he be the outside corner opposite of Diamador Lenore? If not, then you have to find a corner opposite of Demo. If you get rid of Demo and you don't like Renardo Green, then you have to completely rebuild your secondary outside of Upton Stout in the slot. So I don't think that move would make any sense at all. Mac Jones, as we talked about, yeah, that could make some sense. But Diamador Lenore, I want him to be a Niner because I think he's a terrific player and one of the more undervalued corners in the NFL.
There were some interesting names on this list of guys that potentially could be traded this offseason. I'm going to throw a few names your way. These were the guys that I thought fit the Niners the best that were on this list. Max Crosby, Jordan Addison. They say Green Bay may trade Rashawn Gary. I think he would be a great fit. Jesse Bates, who was just with Raheem Morris.
You need a better safety.
Lucas Van Ness from Green Bay, the defensive lineman from Iowa. Budda Baker, would be a fantastic 49er. Walker Little, who went to Stanford, offensive tackle. Kayvon Thibodeau. Darius Williams, who played for Raheem Morris with the Rams as a corner. And Brian Thomas Jr., the receiver for Jacksonville. Of those guys, is there anybody that you would say, yeah, absolutely, that's the guy, go after him?
I like a lot of those players. Rashawn Gary, I think, would be a good one. Jesse Bates would be a good one. I know that I've said the Niners need to get younger. They also need to get more talented. And if you do draft a safety early, Jesse Bates can be veteran insurance. So I honestly, you're reeling off those names. Like, I like a lot of them as players who I think would fit the Niners and players who I'd be very, very interested in.
Yeah, no, a lot of good ones there. And we'll one last thought on the Super Bowl. We'll share the screen on this one. This is a great number that I saw. This is pretty amazing. Let's see here. Here it is. This is passer rating leaders against number one scoring defenses, because now you got Seahawks with their number one scoring defense. Look at this. Roger Staubach in Super Bowl 13 went up against the number one Steelers defense, lost 35-31. Marino in Super Bowl 19 went against the number one Niner defense, lost 38-16. Jim Kelly in Super Bowl 35 went up against the number one New York Giants defense, lost 20-19. Matt Ryan lost with the Falcons to the Patriots, their number one defense, 34-28. The only guy who's ever beaten the number one scoring defense in the Super Bowl was Joe Montana, beat the Broncos 55-10 in
one
Super
of the most
Bowl
dominant
24.
Super Bowl performances ever.
I mean, that's unbelievable. Niners put up 55 points against the number one scoring defense. I didn't even realize Denver was number one. So that leads us to Drake May. Does this tell you that Drake May is going to match Joe Montana, or is he going to be like everybody else, going up against the number one scoring defense, and he's going to lose?
I think this is a really difficult matchup for this Patriots offense. I just think Seattle is so good on the defensive side of the ball, and that's whether they have Nick Gaiman-Worry or not. You look at how they perform at all three levels: the talent, the length, the speed, the physicality, the violence. I was talking with Bill Romanowski yesterday, and he said, I didn't watch a lot of Seattle until late in the year, and he was so impressed with how well they're coached, the scheme that they run, how everybody rallies to the football. But the big word that he used that I just threw out there, it's the violence in which they play with. And I think Seattle has the edge with their defensive line over the Patriots' offensive line. I think Seattle has the edge with their rushing defense against the Patriots' rushing offense. I think that the Patriots, outside of Stephon Diggs, they're solid at wide receiver, but I think Seattle, is better in the secondary. We saw how Seattle was just completely able to throttle this Niners team in all phases. So I just look at this matchup as one where I like Seattle across the board. And I think that the Patriots have gotten here a little bit earlier than anybody anticipated. Year 2 for Drake May, year 1 for Mike Vrabel. I don't think it's their time. I just think that the Seahawks are rolling right now. They've become a juggernaut. I know it's year 2 under Mike McDonald, but the roster building process has been has been put together by John Schneider over the last few years. I just think it's Seattle's Super Bowl to win.
Yep. One Niner note, the Niners have hired Roman Sapolu, son of 4-time Super Bowl champion Jesse Sapolu, to be the assistant O-line coach. This is according to Aaron Wilson.
I like that under Forster. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's a nice one. And 2 supers, and then we'll bolt for the door. We got this one from, 301. He says, Chase, Who has a better chance to make the Super Bowl next year, the Niners or the Eagles? Ooh, that's a
Eagles
tough
have a lot of questions right now. It's so early to say before free agency and the draft, but I do think if the Niners can get better on offense, more explosive, younger, more dynamic, and you stay healthy next year for the first time in a very long time, I think the Niners actually have a better shot to win a Super Bowl next year and to get there.
Wow, that's saying something. Dimitrov says Niners are 6 players away. Wide receiver, edge, center, linebacker, safety, cornerback.
I'll put left guard in there too.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't forget left guard. And also, they're not 6 players away because they need 2 wide receivers and they need 2 linebackers.
Yeah.
So that
Those
there.
Those are good needs, though.
Yeah.
Those are good needs. Yeah.
Jerry Rice said they need a wide receiver with speed. They definitely need an edge rusher. They definitely need a center. They definitely need a linebacker. They definitely need a safety, definitely need a corner. I would say the only other things that it would be at or near the top of the list, left guard and pass rushing tackle. I think they
Ernberg is right on it right there. Good follow-up.
He says 10 players, 2 wide receivers, a center, a guard, a tackle, an edge, a defensive tackle, a corner, a linebacker, a running back. Yep, I agree. Ernberg's right on the money on that. All right, that's going to do it for us. Chase, enjoy your rest of your travels. Hey, man, you know what was really cool, I thought, was that you put on your track shoes and you're running around the city.
Yep.
And you acknowledged that, which a lot of people are acknowledging, that, man, I mean, look how beautiful the city of San Francisco is. And you had, yes, are there, is there feces and is there dirtiness and is there, there's a lot of bad inner city stuff going on in San Francisco. It's not the cleanest place ever, but you know what? As far as just the bones of, like you said, the bones of a building, the bones of this city, when you look at how many beautiful, the weather, the beautiful, waterfront, the whole deal.
The geography is gorgeous.
Yourself.
The architecture is historic. Yeah. The views are amazing. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Because look, I know in the national media, San Francisco's gotten some heat. And can the leadership in the city be a little bit better to improve some of the conditions for people in San Francisco? I think so. But I think Mayor Lurie is trying to do that. This city has a lot to offer. And I think that for any big city, you are going to run into problems like cleanliness and homelessness and some areas being a little bit rough and some areas being drug invested. And I'll say this, we were staying in Union Square and we would walk to the Moscone Center every single night to Radio Row. I don't know if I would want my girlfriend walking around without any help late at night in some of these areas. But again, you can say this about many major cities in America, and hopefully over time we can work on some of these problems. But from a food standpoint, arts and culture, history, geography, sights and sounds, things to do, the food, I've had incredible food here. And then I don't want to get this wrong to sound like an idiot, but on Wednesday and Thursday, I went on really long runs around the city. So on Wednesday, I went to the Ferry Building and kind of was just along the water. I went from Union Square to the Ferry Building and back. That was gorgeous as the sun was coming up. And then I put on my X page, San Francisco runners, what should I do that's doable? And yesterday I started in Union Square, caught the sunrise around the Ferry Building, took the Ember Cadero Trail past Oracle Park to Mission Bay and the Chase Center. Absolutely gorgeous. So being right by the water, seeing the bridge, seeing the ferry come in, it was gorgeous. And I have to come back here and spend more time here where I'm not working 14 hours a day. That's what I'm here to do, is to work. But there's so much that I still want to do. I want to get a burrito in Mission Bay. I want to run across the Golden Gate Bridge. I want to go on some hikes around here. I want to go to Alcatraz. It's been a bucket list item for me for so long. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to spend some more time here and I'll document those journeys as well.
Dude, if you come back for training camp in July, we'll go play some nice golf and,
be awesome.
Get out to Marin County. And, there's
Damon said, if you're back here, I'll have you over for dinner. So that's fine with me too.
Land's End by the Golden Gate Bridge in the tunnel top area over by the Golden Gate Bridge, all that area is just, it's spectacular. It's absolutely spectacular.
Gorgeous.
Last super, and then we'll bolt. This one from the last hero. He says, with free agency coming up, does Jed need to make a good public decision about the electric substation issue soon? Make the Niners practice elsewhere? I don't know. What do you think, Chase? I mean, it's obviously a thing with NFL players. It's not like they're not going to know. They do know. So there's what would you do? I mean, to me, it's like, could you commission a study? I mean, it's obviously you're not going to spend $20 million. I don't see them doing that. They're not moving the practice facility. The people many that have said, hey, look, they've been there for years and years and years. This is more of a recent development, but I think you got to do something that tries to debunk this on some concrete way before March. That'd be my thought.
And I'm surprised that Jed York didn't bring up or acknowledge the fact that the substation has greatly expanded over the years since the Niners have been practicing at that facility. What I would do, which I think makes the most sense from a fiscal perspective and an optics point of view, the Niners literally practice in the shadows of that substation. I mean, it is right next to it, Larry. You see it. Those of you who see practice clips, you see the substation in the background. Move the practice field to where the youth soccer fields are. And I know that some people might say, Chase, now you're anti-youth soccer. No, I want every young kid to be fit, and I want these footballers to play youth soccer and to be healthy, right? But you could play soccer anywhere across the city. So move the practice field there to just get away from the electrical substation to just see if that solves some of the issues. I've never said this is the main issue, but it could be one of a multitude of reasons for why the Niners have been so injured since 2013. You got to figure it out.
Yeah, you got to figure it out. And hope is not a plan, as Billy Bean would say, and that's still absolutely true. Chase, have a great, safe travels, man.
Thank you.
Are you staying for the game, or are you bolting back?
I'm leaving tonight at 12:20 a.m. We have a Chat Sports event for our Raiders channel up in San Jose. If anybody wants to join us, I'll tweet out some of that information, but I've got that a little bit later, but I'll be on Radio Row for the rest of the day. So are you coming down here?
Yeah, I'm coming down this afternoon.
I'll see you here in a little bit. Yep.
Thanks to Chase. Thanks to all of you guys. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sleeper for sponsoring the Krug Show. And thanks to Habas Law. 1-800-INJURED. HabasLaw.com on the web. They will fight to make it right. Thanks to all of you. And go Niners into this offseason. But I'm picking New England to win the game. But, it's more with my heart than my head. But thanks to Chase. Thanks to all of you. And have a great rest of your day.